You ever notice how you ended up exactly where you swore you'd never be? That job you took temporarily 5 years ago. That relationship you knew wasn't right, but somehow you're still in. That city you moved to for one reason and stayed for 100 worse ones. That version of yourself you promised you'd only be until things got better. Here's the thing. You didn't wake up one day and choose this life. You made 1,000 small choices that all seemed perfectly reasonable at the time. Logical, even. Safe. And each one built a bar on a cage you can't see. Most people don't realize they're trapped because the prison doesn't look like a prison. It looks like responsibility. It looks like being practical. It looks like doing the right thing. But underneath all those reasonable explanations is a life that doesn't fit anymore. A life that might never have fit. You took that job because you needed money. Fair enough. Then you stayed because leaving seemed risky. You got the promotion because it was there. You bought the bigger house because that's what people do when they get promoted. You stayed in the city because the house is here. And somewhere along the way, the temporary became permanent. The compromise became your identity. Each choice made sense in isolation. That's the trick. None of them felt like you were building a cage. Each one felt like you were solving a problem, taking care of business, being an adult. But you weren't building a life. You were building a structure, and now you're living inside it, wondering why you can't breathe. The architecture of your current reality was designed by a younger version of you who didn't know what you know now, who couldn't see what you can see, who was operating from a different set of fears and priorities. And that version of you built something that might have made sense back then, but definitely doesn't serve who you are now. But here's what's real. Cage is built from commitments, from mortgages and marriages and identities and expectations, from things you've told people you are, from investments you've made that you can't get back. You think, I can't leave this job, I have bills. I can't end this relationship, what would people think? I can't move, I just bought this house. I can't start over, I'm too old, too tired, too invested in this version of reality. And every one of those thoughts is a bar you put there yourself. Every one of those can'ts is a choice you're making to stay in the cage. But you don't see it as a choice because it feels like fact. It feels like reality. It feels like the way things are. But it's not reality. It's a story. A story you built one reasonable decision at a time. And the thing about stories is they can be rewritten. But first you have to see that you're living in one. Most people never get there. They spend their entire lives inside a structure they built unconsciously, maintaining it, defending it, explaining why it makes sense, why they have to stay, why there's no other option, why this is just how life is. And from the outside it looks fine. It looks successful even. Nice house, stable job, normal life. But inside it's suffocating. Inside it's a slow, quiet desperation that you've learned to call normal. Inside it's the constant nagging feeling that this isn't it. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. This isn't who you're supposed to be. But you don't listen to that feeling. You can't afford to. Because listening to it would mean admitting you've been building the wrong thing. And that's too painful. So you ignore it. You numb it. You convince yourself it's fine. That everyone feels this way. That they're continuing, following the script, playing the role, being who you've always been, doing what you've always done. Because that's what makes sense. That's what's reasonable. That's what's safe. But safe isn't the same as alive. And reasonable isn't the same as right. And at some point, you have to ask yourself if the cage you built to protect you is actually just keeping you from living. Here's where it gets interesting. You know you're stuck. You've known for a while now. But you're still doing the exact same things you did yesterday, and the day before that, and the month before that, and probably the year before that. Why? Why do we keep choosing what doesn't work? Because your brain isn't designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive. And alive means predictable. Alive means repeating what's worked before, even if worked just means you survived it. Every choice you make carves a pathway in your brain, a little neural trail that says, this is how we do things. And the more you walk that trail, the deeper it gets, until it's not a trail anymore, it's a highway. And your brain defaults to it without asking your permission. This is why you keep dating the same type of person, even though the last 3 relationships ended the exact same way. This is why you keep taking jobs you hate. This is why you keep saying yes when you mean no. Your brain isn't evaluating whether this is the right choice. It's just following the pathway that already exists. You're on autopilot. And autopilot is running a script written years ago by someone who wasn't thinking clearly, wasn't informed, and definitely didn't have your best interests in mind. That person was just trying to survive whatever moment they were in. And they created a pattern. Our decisions are made unconsciously, sometimes seconds before we're even aware we've decided anything. Your brain decides, and then it creates a story about why that decision makes sense. And you believe the story because you think you're the one making it up. But you're not. You're just narrating a script that's already written. A script that says, this is how we respond to stress. This is how we handle relationships. This is what we do when we're scared. And you follow it because it's familiar. Because familiar feels like truth. The worst part? Other people can see your patterns clearer than you can. Your friends know you're going to end up with another unavailable partner before you even meet them. Your family knows you're going to quit this job just like you quit the last one. They can see the cycle because they're outside it, but you can't because you're living it. And when they point it out, you get defensive. You explain how this time is different, how you've learned, how this situation isn't like the others. But it is. The specifics might change, but the pattern is identical. You're just too close to it to see. Technical moment. If what you're hearing right now resonates with something inside you, hit subscribe. It's a signal that this information matters to you. So why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep choosing what we know doesn't work? Because breaking a pattern requires something most people aren't willing to do. It requires sitting with massive discomfort. It requires making choices that feel wrong, even though they're right. It requires acting against every instinct your brain is throwing at you. When you go to make a different choice, your brain panics. It floods you with anxiety, doubt, fear. It tells you you're making a mistake, that you should stick with what you know, that trying something new is dangerous. And most people listen to that voice because they think it's the new normal. And that process is brutal. Because in the meantime, you feel like you're losing yourself. You feel like you don't know who you are anymore. You feel unmoored, uncertain, wrong. And that feeling is so uncomfortable that most people bail. They go back to the pattern. They convince themselves it wasn't that bad. They recommit to the cage. And the cycle continues. The same choices, the same outcomes, the same life you say you don't want, but keep choosing anyway. Not because you're weak, but because breaking free requires becoming someone new. And becoming someone new means letting the old version die. And that feels like death. But it's not death. It's birth. It's just that birth is messy and painful, and nobody tells you how much it's going to hurt to become who you actually are. So how do you actually break out? How do you stop running the same script when your entire nervous system is wired to keep running it? You start with one choice, one single moment where you catch yourself about to follow the pattern and you stop. Just stop. Even for 5 seconds. Even if you end up following the pattern anyway, you stop and notice. That moment of noticing, that's the crack in the cage. That's where the light gets in. Most people think they need some big, dramatic shift. They need to quit their job, leave their relationship, move across the country. And maybe eventually they do. But that's not where it starts. It starts with the tiniest interruption in the pattern, the smallest moment of awareness. You're about to say yes to something you don't want to do, and you pause. Just pause. Feel the discomfort of not immediately agreeing. Notice the urge to make everyone else just as strongly. They just don't let it decide for them. You feel the urge to check your phone. You notice it. You feel the anxiety rising, and you sit with it. Just sit with the discomfort of not immediately reaching for the dopamine hit. Not forever, just for a minute. Just long enough to prove to yourself that you can. That's the practice. Not never feeling the urge, but interrupting the automatic response. Creating space between the feeling and the action. And in that space, choosing something different. It's going to feel wrong. That's how you know it's working. If it feels comfortable, you're still in the pattern. Real change feels uncomfortable. Feels uncertain, feels like you're doing it wrong, even when you're doing it right. Your brain will fight you. It'll tell you this is pointless, that you should just go back to what works, that trying something new is dangerous. And you have to recognize that voice for what it is. The guardian of the cage, trying to keep you safe inside it. Thank it for trying to protect you, and do the thing anyway. Here's what nobody tells you about breaking patterns. You don't break them once. You break them 1,000 times. Every time the trigger shows up, every time the old pathway tries to activate, you have to make the choice again, to pause, to notice, to choose differently. And it's exhausting. It's so much easier to just run the script, to let autopilot take over, to be who you've always been. But that's how you stay stuck. That's how you stay in a life you don't like. The way out is through repetition. The same way you built the cage, one choice at a time. You dismantle it, one choice at a time. Actually know who you are underneath all the patterned behavior. And that person doesn't need a cage. That person is ready to build something real. If this video shifted something in you, write in the comments, I choose consciously. Write it as your promise that you're done living on autopilot, that you're ready to see what happens when you actually choose. Nobody